Most businesses look at the big brands and think, well, they're operating in an entirely different league to me. What could I possibly learn from them? But the truth is, if you know what to look for, there's lots that you can learn from them. Now, you can't just copy what Nike or McDonald's are doing on the surface, but the underlying principles behind what they're doing can and absolutely will work for small brands with small budgets. So in today's video, I'm going to break down 5 big brand insights that you can steal, and I'm going to show you how you can apply them to your small business or brand. So let's start with the first, positioning clarity. One of the biggest mistakes that I see small businesses make is not being clear about who they're for. Now, on the flip side, let's take Nike as an example here of a big brand. Now, it can appear from the outside or superficially like Nike are for everyone. They have a really broad appeal, but that's only because their marketing, specifically their marketing budget, allows them to show up in so many different spaces. So you'll see them in technology, you'll see them in the sports category, you'll see them in fashion. But how they show up in all of those different spaces is incredibly focused. They have a real clarity about who they are, and they state it on their website. They say, we are for athletes. And then they qualify it by saying, we consider anybody who has a body to be an athlete. So that's really, really focused. They're about performance. Now, on the flip side, when I speak to lots of small business owners and people building brands, they'll say things like, well, we're for everyone. And the reality and the irony here is that by trying to be for everyone, they end up not truly connecting with anyone. Now, the big brands are unashamedly not afraid to alienate a segment of the public. They are unashamedly not for everyone. And you can apply this to your business too. So have a think and get real clarity on who you serve, what problem you solve, and what makes you different, and then show up consistently like that. For example, if you have a cafe, you might want to decide between, are we going after commuters on the way to work looking for to grab a quick drink on the way into work? Or are we trying to create a space where people can work and kick back and relax? Because it's very difficult to communicate both at once. Have a look at these statements. Quality coffee, fast. Your cozy workspace, great coffee. Fast coffee for commuters and a cozy spot to work for hours. In my last video, I broke down the difference between branding, marketing, and advertising, and I'll link that video above so you can go and check that out if you want to. But here's where it gets interesting when we start looking at the big brands, because it can seem like those 3 concepts kind of blur together. It can be really difficult to see where one ends and the other begins. And that's what I want to show you next, actually, because one of the tactics that the big brands use to keep us engaged is the power of open loops. McDonald's recently ran a billboard campaign here in the UK where they didn't even mention, they had no logo. You saw very little representations of the products at just the edge of a fry, the edge of a milkshake cup, and that was enough. Everybody knows what the ad is about. And Kit Kat have done similar things as well, and there are lots of big brand examples where they employ this tactic. Now, the reason that they can do that is because they have literally decades of recognition, of brand recognition in the bank. We are all so familiar with their products and their branding that we don't need to see it all to know exactly what the ad is about. But the interesting thing here is that these big brands, when they do this, they're not just showing off. They know that when they invite us to fill in the blanks like this, what they're actually doing is creating an open loop in our brains. Now, an open loop is simply a piece of incomplete information that our brains feel compelled to fill in, to complete. Now, this is why when you can't find your car keys at night, you can't go to bed until you found them, or why your TV shows end on a cliffhanger. But more than just creating an open loop, thanks to something called the Zeigarnik effect, our brains are actually more inclined to hold on to incomplete information than complete information. So when big brands use this tactic and invite us to fill in the blanks, we're actually more likely to internalize and remember the message. Really clever stuff. Now, as small business owners, We cannot afford to copy those tactics. We do not have the brand recognition to do that. It would make no sense for us to run ads or communication campaigns in that way. We'd literally be paying to say nothing at all. But what we can do is sprinkle a little bit of intrigue into our communication. We can use the power of open loops to make our messages more memorable. Now, this doesn't have to be complicated. This could be as simple as an email subject line that hints at what's inside without actually giving the game away. So have a think about what areas in your communication can you employ this tactic to create open loops, to drive intrigue, and to make your brand more memorable. Hi guys, sorry for interrupting the video. I have a huge favor to ask. I am right at the start of my YouTube journey. I am 8 videos in. I've already got a few subscribers. Those of you who have subscribed, thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you are finding this useful, if you are trying to build a brand, then please do like and subscribe and come along on the journey with me. I have so many ideas of videos that I want to make that I think are going to help you guys build better brands and go on that branding journey and get some of that big brand thinking into your small brands. So please like and subscribe below. Come along with me on the journey. It's going to be great. Let's get back to the main video. So once a brand has your attention, the next challenge is keeping it. And that's where consistency and flexibility come in. One of the things big brands do incredibly well is to manage the tension between flexibility and consistency. And you really need both of these things working for you. And quite honestly, if you can get these things in balance, you'll be well on your way to building an incredible brand, because I think it's the space in between those things where brands start to feel truly alive. But you do need both of them. You need consistency so that you stay recognizable and you can build that recognition over time. But you need flexibility in your brand too, so as you can stay relevant and not become stale in how you look and what you say. Take Coca-Cola as an example here. They have been through many, many, many iterations of their logo. Lots of things have changed about how Coca-Cola present themselves, but there has always been an underlying core through all of that hasn't changed. There have been elements within that brand that are untouchable, that they have always had. The red color, the red ribbon, the script font, but they've allowed themselves the space to evolve in other areas. And this ties into my brand guideline video that I made a few weeks ago. And the point I make there is that in its early stages, businesses certainly don't need a guideline document to lock them down to be so rigid. What you really need is to clearly define who you are, and then you can lock down a few constants that you're never going to change, but do allow yourself the flexibility to evolve and to change and to grow as a brand. I've used the analogy many times on this channel that brands are like people, and people are not the same. A person is not the same person they were 2 years ago. Their soul remains the same. Who they are in essence remains the same, but they have evolved, they have developed, and a brand should do the same thing. Of course, consistency alone is not enough. It's what you say with it that counts. And that's what the big brands do better than anyone else. They keep things simple. They simplify to amplify. I want you to think about how Apple advertises their products. Have you ever seen an Apple ad that advertises an iMac, an iPhone, and an iPad all at once? The answer is no, because they would never do that. It's always one product, one image, and one message. And they do that because that kind of clarity has real cut through. Now, there's a tendency with small businesses and smaller brands to do the exact opposite. They over communicate the product's benefits, or they over communicate the number of services on offer. And in reality, all that does is dilutes the message. Instead of saying one thing really well, you say lots of things not so well. And the end result is less clarity. Now, complexity will always kill clarity. And we really want clarity with our brand and with our messaging. So next time you're developing any kind of piece of communication for your brand, embrace simplicity. Ask yourself, how can I make this as simple as possible? Is there a way of saying this in a more simple way? And keep distilling things down until you have real clarity in what you're trying to say. And a good place to start with this is to have a look at your website's homepage. Are you over communicating there? Are you trying to list too many of your product's benefits in that one place? Or are you doing as you should be doing, which is making a single promise to a single consumer to solve a single problem? And then demonstrating how you can accomplish that, how you can solve that problem for them. So take a look at your website homepage and have a think. How can I strip this back? How can I simplify what I am saying so as it lands better? Now, of course, once you've sorted out your clarity, you can then start to think about contrast in your brand. And that takes us nicely into my final point here, which is to embrace being different. Now, when you're starting a brand, launching a new product, or starting a business, everybody will tell you you need to research the competition. And that is great advice. You 100% need to be researching the competition. What is everybody else doing who are trying to do something similar to me? But I think sometimes the reason to do that gets misconstrued. And people think, well, I need to fit in within that space. I need to look like a legitimate option within that space. How can I blend in? When in actual reality, the reason for doing that competition is so that you know what not to do, so that you can take a fresh approach, so as you can do things differently. And that way you will guarantee differentiation. You will stand out from your competitors, both visually and strategically, and how you position yourself. Oatly is a great example of this. I mean, it's oat milk, for crying out loud. It is not the most exciting category, but Oatly, because they came at it with a fresh angle in a different way, disrupted things. And if you compare Oatly's branding to every other brand of oat milk, which is on sale in the supermarkets, it's quite clear to see that they really stand out because they were bold enough to go somewhere different with their brand. So don't be afraid to do something different. Embrace it. Look at what your competitors are doing and then use that to guide you in the opposite direction, visually and strategically. Okay, so there you have it. There's 5 principles that we can borrow from the big brands without stealing their exact marketing tactics. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.